It's a curious time to be alive. We've mapped the human genome, sent robots to Mars, and trained artificial intelligence to mimic the spark of human creativity, yet we still struggle to have dinner without checking our phones. We've built telescopes that see back in time, billions of years into the cosmic past, yet we have trouble looking each other in the eye. We have access to more information than any civilization before us, and yet loneliness is one of the fastest growing epidemics of the modern age. That's the paradox. How is it that a species capable of simulating entire universes on a computer chip can't seem to simulate empathy in daily life? I don't have the answer, but I do have questions. And sometimes questions are the most powerful thing a civilization can hold because they force us to look deeper, to pause, to wonder. And wonder, my friend, is the gateway to everything. If you zoom out far enough past the city lights, past the ozone, past the blinking satellites and low Earth orbit, you'll find yourself staring at a pale blue dot suspended in a shaft of sunlight. That's us. All of us. Every president, poet, prisoner, and parent. Every human who's ever lived or ever will, born onto a world smaller than a grain of dust floating through an interstellar sunbeam. That dot doesn't come with instructions, no manual on how to live, no cosmic warranty. And yet, somehow, we've made it this far. We've learned to write, to record, to reason. We've turned stone into spacecraft and breath into symphonies. We are, by all accounts, the universe's most ambitious attempt at understanding itself. But something strange is happening with people. Not just sociologically, not just psychologically, something beneath the surface subtle, quiet, but seismic. You can feel it in the questions people ask today. They're not just asking what to do. They're asking, why does it matter? They're not just asking how to succeed. They're asking, what does it mean to live a good life? Something is stirring, not in the stars, but in us. Now, don't get me wrong. Human history has always been a messy experiment. Civilizations rise and fall, empires implode, cultures evolve. But the strangeness of our current moment isn't just another cycle of politics or economy. It's existential. We are, in real time, straddling two paradigms. One foot in a world designed for survival, the other in a world that demands purpose. And for the first time, those two don't seem to align. We evolved in tribes. We hunted, gathered, clustered around fire. Every gesture, every instinct had one primary question behind it. Will this help me survive? But now, we're surviving longer than ever, and for many, survival alone is no longer enough. What happens when a brain evolved for threat detection is wired into a world of constant notifications? What happens when meaning doesn't come from a deity or tradition, but from the self, and the self is overwhelmed, distracted, disoriented? You get exactly what we're seeing now. A species out of sync with its own inventions. Humans trying to navigate a digital age with Paleolithic software. But let's not romanticize the past. The old world was no utopia. It was just predictable. Now, the variables have changed, and as any good physicist will tell you, when enough variables shift, the entire equation changes. The question is no longer, can we survive as a species? The real question is, can we stay human in the process? That's what's on the line. And that's why I say strange things are about to happen with people, because we are not static creatures. We are not fixed in form or function. We are, at our core, agents of adaptation, built to change, built to question, built to stand beneath the stars and ask, what does it mean to matter? So maybe these strange feelings, the disconnection, the anxiety, the unrest-errant signs of decline, maybe they're the early contractions of a birth, the messy, beautiful, terrifying symptoms of transformation. The caterpillar, after all, dissolves completely in its cocoon before becoming something new. It doesn't just grow. Wingsit becomes goo first. Disoriented, broken down, rewritten. Could that be us? Could this moment, this tension, we all feel be the cocoon? Now, I'm not here to tell you everything will be fine. This isn't a motivational poster hanging in a guidance counselor's office. This is reality. And reality, like the cosmos, is not always kind, but it is honest. And here's an honest truth. We've spent centuries trying to control the world outside, use, weather, war, wealth. But perhaps the next frontier is inward. Because if the cosmos has taught us anything, it's that complexity begets evolution. From the simplest hydrogen atom to the birth of stars, from stars to stardust, from stardust to neurons, firing in the human brain creation follows complexity. And here we are, complex, confused, curious creatures on the edge of something we don't yet understand. We are not the masters of the universe. We are the universe becoming aware of itself. So what happens next? Perhaps what happens next depends not on governments, not on algorithms, not even on technological innovation, but on something far more difficult to measure: awareness. You see, awareness is not a product. It's not something you can manufacture or legislate. It doesn't come in a download or arrive in a shipment. It emerges quietly, like the first light of dawn breaking over a sleeping world. It starts when one person decides to look inward instead of outward for meaning. It continues when that same person begins to ask inconvenient questions, not because they're trying to be difficult, but because they're tired of living on autopilot. And if enough people ask those questions at the same time, if enough people dare to feel the weight of being alive in a universe that doesn't guarantee answers, then something begins to shift. Not instantly, not with fanfare, but gradually, like a planet slowly tilting its axis toward a new season. That shift begins in the smallest, most fragile places, in daily choices, in acts of kindness no one sees, in the courage to admit confusion instead of pretending certainty. And if you're paying attention, you'll see it. Not in headlines, but in subtler things. You'll notice the way a child pauses before hurting a bug, the way an old man gives away his umbrella on a rainy day, the way strangers make eye contact at a protest not in anger, but in recognition. There is something ancient being remembered, something primal and yet futuristic, something that says, I am here, and so are you, and neither of us is alone in this vast ocean of stars. You see, people aren't just waking up to injustice or inequality. They're waking up to interconnectedness, to the truth that every action vibrates outward like ripples on a pond, that our thoughts, our words, our choices, they all matter, not because someone's watching, but because reality itself is responsive. This isn't mysticism. It's quantum entanglement. It's ecology. It's physics. Every particle is connected to another. Every force has an equal and opposite reaction. You can call it karma if you like. You can call it cause and effect. But whatever name you give it, the universe responds to the energy we emit. And right now, collectively, we are emitting a frequency that is uneasy. Not hopeless, not doomed, but disoriented, as if our species has outgrown its old operating system, but hasn't yet installed the upgrade. That's what happens in evolutionary gaps. There's always a lag between potential and understanding. We invented electricity before we knew what to do with it. We split the atom before we fully grasped the cost. And now we've unlocked another force node. External, but internal consciousness. We're beginning to see that how we think changes what we perceive, that beliefs shape behavior, that perspective alters experience. And once you realize that, you can't go back. You can't unknow the fact that reality is participatory, that you are not a passive observer of the universe. You are a collaborator, which means the way we treat ourselves, each other, and this planet isn't philosophical poetry, it's astrophysical relevance. Imagine if galaxies were governed not only by gravity, but by compassion. Imagine if dark matter wasn't just the hidden mass between stars, but the invisible kindness between strangers. That's not just poetic, it's possible. Because while we may never build a rocket fast enough to reach Andromeda, we already have something more powerful, the ability to reach each other. The real frontier was never space. The real frontier is empathy. It's the courage to care about something beyond your own comfort. And let's be clear, this is not easy. Caring is messy. Empathy is inefficient. Compassion doesn't scale well in spreadsheets. But neither did love. Neither did art. And yet, they're the only things that have ever truly changed the world. We've tried building civilizations on power and fear. We've tried control. We've tried consumption. And look where that got us. Melting ice caps, rising walls, and algorithms designed to keep us addicted and angry. So maybe it's time to try something radically unorthodox. Maybe it's time to build a civilization on awareness, on curiosity, on the brave, quiet revolution of people who are willing to say, I don't know, but I want to learn. People who are willing to listen not just to data, but to each other. People who understand that intelligence is not the same as wisdom, and that wisdom isn't measured in degrees, but in how we treat the life around us. If that sounds naive, remember, the Earth was once thought to be the center of the universe. Then we realized we orbit the sun. Then we discovered the sun itself is one of hundreds of billions in a galaxy that is itself one of trillions. And now we are beginning to understand that even consciousness may not be confined to biology or brain tissue. It might be a field, a frequency, a fabric woven through space and time one we're just beginning to tune into. So yes, strange things are about to happen with people because we are standing on the edge of something vast, something unnameable, something as old as starlight and as new as the next thought you haven't yet had. This is not science fiction. It is science awakening. And you, whether you realize it or not, are part of it. You are part of it not because you asked to be, but because consciousness doesn't wait for permission. It just arrives. It arrives through questions that keep you up at night, through moments of awe that stop you mid-step, through the quiet realization that what you've been chasing may not be what truly matters. And it doesn't matter what background you come from, what flag you wave, or what language you speak, because wonder is a universal language. It's the one thing that has the power to dissolve borders without negotiation. It's what makes a child look up at the stars and feel both small and infinite. And that duality, the ability to feel insignificant yet essentially, is what makes us human. We are the only species, as far as we know, that contemplates its own extinction while still making plans for next weekend. We are fragile yet relentless. We are the stardust that learned to think, to question, and to hope. And perhaps the greatest hope of all is that we can evolve not just technologically, but morally. Not just in power, but in perspective. That we might someday become a civilization, not merely intelligent, but wise. But that journey doesn't begin in labs or think tanks. It begins in the simplest of places. The decision to look another human in the eye and say, I see you. It begins when a society decides that truth is not optional, that empathy is not weakness, that kindness is not naive, because what we normalize, we become. And right now, we are normalizing speed over depth, spectacle over substance, reaction over reflection. But consciousness has no need for speed. It moves in rhythms, not in algorithms. It asks you to sit with discomfort, to wrestle with paradox, to be okay with not knowing. And in that space, something remarkable happens. You begin to see the patterns across disciplines, across centuries, across cultures. You see that science and spirituality, long thought to be rivals, are actually asking the same question: what is the nature of reality? And what is our place within it? One looks through a telescope, the other looks through the soul, but both are looking, and both are part of the same equation. We were never meant to choose between logic and love, between data and meaning. We were meant to integrate, to bridge, to become whole. And maybe that's the strangeness people are starting to feel. A subconscious awareness that fragmentation can no longer sustain us. That dualism versus you, human versus nature, mind versus body, is giving way to something more complex, more fluid, more honest. Integration. We are integrating our shadows, our contradictions, our history. And integration is never comfortable. It requires us to confront what we've denied, to forgive what we've condemned, to rebuild what we've neglected. That's why people are feeling strange, because growth doesn't feel like a victory march. It feels like breaking down in the grocery store aisle when something in you finally says, I can't do this like this anymore. And that's not weakness. That's truth erupting through the surface. The universe has always expanded through disruption. Stars explode to make new elements. Galaxies collide to birth new structures. And maybe, just maybe, human consciousness must tremble before it transcends. Maybe we need to shake loose the assumptions we've inherited, the scripts we followed without question, the systems that promise comfort but rob us of connection. Maybe what we're seeing in society, the restlessness, The polarization, the discontent is not a breakdown, but a breakthrough in disguise, a sign that the cocoon is cracking. And no, we can't go back. Not to a simpler time, not to a purer past, because nostalgia is a liar. It edits out the inconvenient parts and sells us a story that never quite existed, but we can go forward, not blindly, not naively, but with eyes wide open and hearts attuned to the pulse of something ancient returning, a remembrance that we are not consumers of reality, we are creators of it. And that every thought, every action, every choice contributes to the gravitational field of our shared future. You matter, not in a feel-good slogan kind of way, but in a literal, measurable, astrophysical kind of way. Because you are energy, you are vibration, you are information in motion. And the universe responds to the coherence or incoherence of that signal. So ask yourself, what frequency am I broadcasting? What future am I rehearsing in my daily thoughts? What kind of world am I reinforcing through the stories I tell myself about who I am and what's possible? These are not rhetorical questions. They are equations waiting to be solved. They are invitations to participate in a cosmos that is not indifferent, but interactive. You see, the universe doesn't make moral judgments. It doesn't favor good over evil. It favors balance, harmony, alignment. And when a system becomes too unstable, when the frequencies get too discordant, it shifts. It rebalances, sometimes through collapse, sometimes through creativity. And that's the crossroads we find ourselves in. Strange things are happening, yes, but strange is how the new gets born. So when I say strange things are about to happen with people, I don't mean UFOs landing in shopping malls or portals opening in the sky, though the cosmos has never been short on surprises. I'm talking about something subtler, something closer to home, a shift in human perception, a collective realization that the world we've built, efficient and optimized as it may be, has left some part of the soul malnourished. We have built cities that never sleep, but our minds are exhausted. We have created networks that connect continents, yet people feel more disconnected than ever before. This is not a contradiction, it's a consequence. When you remove wonder from progress, you get emptiness. When you strip humanity out of innovation, you get alienation. We thought technology would save us, but technology was never the savior. It's a tool. And like any tool, its impact depends on the consciousness of the hand that wields it. Fire can warm a village or burn it down. AI can cure disease or deepen division. The future is not determined by machinists, it's determined by meaning. And meaning cannot be downloaded. It must be discovered, lived, wrestled with. Which brings us to a fundamental truth. Progress without purpose is just movement, but evolution, true evolution, requires direction, not just momentum. And that direction doesn't come from the top, it comes from within. From millions of individual minds beginning to ask new kinds of questions. Not just, how do I get ahead? But who am I becoming in the process? Not just, how can I win? But what does it mean to live well in harmony, in truth? You see, consciousness is not a private affair. It's contagious. Every act of awareness creates a field around it. Every brave conversation, every kind decision, every time someone pauses instead of reacting, that's an act of gravity. And gravity attracts, not in the romantic sense, in the literal sense. The mass of an idea, when rooted in truth, draws other minds toward it, slowly, imperceptibly, until critical mass is reached. And when that happens, paradigms shift, cultures transform. What was once unthinkable becomes obvious. What was once fringe becomes mainstream. This is not a fantasy. It's history. Women voting was once radical. Abolishing slavery was once heresy. Talking openly about mental health was once taboo, until it wasn't. Because minds changed. And when minds change, worlds change. Which is why the real revolution ahead of us isn't political, though it may affect politics. It's not economic, though it will ripple into markets. It's perceptual, a revolution of worldview, a shift in how we define success, progress, and even reality itself. For centuries, we've measured advancement by external metrics: GDP, speed, scale, power. But what if the next chapter of human progress will be measured by inner metrics? Resilience, compassion, equanimity, clarity of mind, and depth of presence. What if our capacity to feel becomes as valuable as our capacity to produce? What if attention becomes the new currency and the way we spend it becomes our legacy? That would mean that every moment matters. Every breath, every word. Not in some sentimental way, but in a quantum way. Because attention is energy, and where we place it determines what grows. That's not spirituality, that's neuroscience. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Focus reshapes the brain, and the brain reshapes experience. So yes, what you focus on becomes your world, and your world becomes the world for others. This is the responsibility of awareness, not to escape, but to engage. Not to withdraw from the chaos, but to understand it from a higher altitude, like a satellite peering through clouds, not to judge the weather, but to understand its patterns. When we do that, when we rise above the noise, we begin to notice something extraordinary. Much of what divides us is artificial, manufactured, programmed, differences that are real but exaggerated, borders that exist on paper more than in biology. And beneath all that noise, a signal, the shared longing of human beings to be seen, to be safe, to belong, to contribute, and to matter. That longing is the same in every language. It exists beneath ideology, beneath history. It is the gravitational center of the human story. And when we connect at that level, not through slogans or platforms, but through shared presence, we begin to remember who we are, not enemies, not demographics, but travelers hurling through space on a rock lit by a star, searching for meaning in the dark. So perhaps the strangest thing that's about to happen with people is not some sudden catastrophe or miraculous event, but something even more powerful, the slow, silent ignition of self-awareness at scale. The moment when millions of individual minds separated by language, geography, belief, and fear begin to resonate with a new frequency. Not a frequency of utopia or perfection, but of participation. A shift from being spectators in the cosmic story to becoming stewards of its next chapter. Because the universe, vast and unbothered though it may seem, has always responded to coherence. Stars form in regions of high density. Life emerges where entropy gives way to pattern. And consciousness deepens wherever attention meets intention. That's where we are now teetering at the edge of an identity shift. We are no longer simply Homo sapiens, the wise ape. We are becoming something else, Homo sentiens, the feeling ape, or perhaps even Homo universalis, the human that remembers its origin in stardust and its responsibility to all forms of life. And what does that responsibility look like? It doesn't mean sainthood. It doesn't mean solving every problem overnight. It means showing up first to yourself, then to others, then to the planet. It means asking better questions, not how do I succeed, but how do I contribute? Not what can I extract, but what can I regenerate? It means redefining intelligence as how fast you can solve a problem, but how deeply you can understand your impact. It means remembering that being human is not a curse of limitation, but a privilege of perspective. No other species we know of gets to reflect on its own existence, to imagine futures not yet written, to feel awe in the presence of the unknown. We do. We are the minds through which the universe studies itself. And that's not just poetics, it's participatory physics. Because the observer always changes the observed. And we are observing now with eyes wider than ever, asking questions that pierce the veil of inherited assumptions. What if success isn't accumulation but alignment? What if the true measure of civilization is not how tall we build, but how well we listen to nature, to each other, to the quiet voice within? And yes, as this awareness spreads, there will be friction. There always is. Paradigm shifts aren't polite. They're messy, chaotic, full of resistance. As the frequency rises, not everyone will want to ascend with it. You may lose people, institutions may resist, whole systems may strain. That's okay. That's part of the physics. When a system reaches critical instability, it doesn't snap, it reorganizes. In thermodynamics, that's called phase transition. In human terms, It's transformation. And during transformation, strange things happen. People feel untethered. Time feels nonlinear. Old beliefs crumble. Identities dissolve. But in that flux, a new form begins to emerge. One rooted not in fear of survival, but in reverence for life. One that sees every human not as competition, but as a co-conspirator in the evolution of understanding. We are entering a moment where we must choose. Will we collapse into fragmentation or cohere into consciousness? Will we race toward convenience or rise toward coherence? Will we consume this planet into exhaustion or steward it into renewal? These questions are not rhetorical. They are real, immediate, and demanding answers not someday, but now. Because the future is not an inevitability, it is an accumulation of choices. Billions of them. Made daily, made locally, made by people who choose presence over numbness, connection over cynicism, imagination over inertia. And those people, maybe they look ordinary. Maybe they don't wear lab coats or speak on stages. Maybe they're just planting food, writing songs, raising children, questioning old patterns, or healing in silence. But they are the pulse of the future. They are the new field through which consciousness is blooming. So yes, strange things are happening with people, but strange does not mean broken. Strange means unfamiliar. And unfamiliar is the signature of emergence. We are emerging from a centuries-long adolescence, an age defined by dominance, division, and distraction. And we are entering, perhaps for the first time, an age of conscious adulthood, where power is redefined, not as control, but as care, where truth is not dictated, but discovered, where freedom is not the absence of limits, but the presence of responsibility. And maybe that's the final message. We are not here to conquer the cosmos. We are here to cooperate with it, to harmonize with its rhythms, to steward its beauty, to add, in our own brief, fragile, extraordinary way, one more note to the grand symphony of existence. You, dear listener, are part of that note. You are not here by accident. You are not insignificant. You are the unfolding of 1 billion years of cosmic chemistry, shaped by gravity, guided by evolution, infused with story, standing now at the crossroads of memory and possibility. And the universe is listening. So, what will you say?